Leatherbrains, the podcast for fantasy football. Now, introducing your host, Hunter Slapdawg Amaruso, and Matthew Scotty Holtmeyer.
And we are live, baby. Welcome to Leatherbrains. As always, I am your host, Slapdawg, and I don't have Scotty with me today, but I do have a very good friend of mine, Yeti. It is the middle of the day. We typically don't do this, but we figured, you know what? Let's bring some information to the Brainiacs a little bit early. Scotty will not be able to join us because, unfortunately, his microphone is having some issues, so he stepped out for this episode. So we figured, you know what? Let's bring him some information a little bit early. So if you're joining us live, welcome aboard on Twitch, YouTube, or Twitter. We do greatly appreciate it. And if not, this podcast will be available on Thursday, and you can listen on any of your podcast platforms. Yeti, how are you doing, sir?
Man, I'm good. Happy Wednesday to the people listening live. Happy Thursday to the people listening later. I also have to say congratulations to the people who made their fantasy playoffs.
Absolutely.
Big congratulations.
Absolutely.
Big week.
Yes. Yeah. Did you let's have a conversation about this before we kick things off here. You know, you and I are in a variety of leagues together. How is your playoffs looking for all of the leagues that you're in? Did you make it in most of them, or what's that looking like?
Yeah, so I really have 3 leagues that I pay attention to. 2 of them are leagues. Obviously, we have our league of record that is a redraft league, and then we have one that's a dynasty. First year doing a dynasty format. Dynasty, I missed the playoffs, but I'm okay with that because my draft pick obviously is going to go up from there. Yeah, sorry about that. Hopefully I get Bajan, but we'll see. In our home league or redraft league, I'm the 2nd seed, so I clinched a bye week this week. So I'm giving my players a little rest, telling them spend time with your families, heal
Absolutely.
up, you know,
Important.
giving them, you know, all the time that they need to get ready for round 2.
Absolutely.
And then, my 3rd league that I'm in, just kind of a fun league that I'm in. I clinched a playoff spot barely because
you're rolling right now.
Yeah, man.
You're feeling good.
Yeah, I'm kind of a machine at this point, I guess.
It's funny. We played each other in our dynasty league, and it was winning in. So we were both fingers crossing to be out. And unfortunately I beat you. So you, because we're both kind of, we're tanking, but you can't tank too bad because you don't want to jeopardize the integrity of the league. And so we were hoping to lose. And unfortunately I snuck my way into the playoffs there. So now it's like, it's full go for me. I'm in the playoff in all my leagues, and I shouldn't be in our league of record. I just want to be very blunt about that. But
see, it's kind of crazy because in our dynasty league, I feel like my team is semi-loaded. I just can't get them all playing at the same time, and it's fucked me over. Like if you look at my running backs, it's like, wow, like you should probably be in the top 5, but no, I'm somehow in the bottom 4. But that's okay.
I got plagued with the injury bug. That was what really did me in. I had Cooper Kupp. He went out. That really, I had made some trades to acquire him, and that really put me in a tough spot. And then I traded away Joe Mixon and Mark Andrews to try and give myself some depth. Has not panned out, and but I still made it in the playoffs. We started really strong, and I think that's what really brought us home. So congratulations to all of those that did make it into the playoffs. For those that didn't, you still got something to play for, and we'll talk about that here at the end of the episode. So stay tuned there. Yeti, let's kick some things off with the news that is happening in the NFL and how it affects your fantasy team.
Let's get down to business.
This first piece of news, man.
I'll let you read it. I'm just devastated.
All right. Well, we have confirmation that Kyler Murray has torn his ACL in his right knee. Slaps, as our local Arizona Cardinals fan, what does this do for dynasty purposes, and how does this team look moving forward with Colt McCoy?
Scotty, our producer, was texting me yesterday about all of this information, and he was asking me my thoughts and opinions, and I'm angry. Like I truth be told, I'm so sad and frustrated because this is probably the worst thing that could happen. Obviously we always say that we don't root for injury on here, but this one is extremely impactful for the entire Cardinals organization, and it's really shitty to see. Because there's a really good chance, you mentioned dynasty football. Kyler Murray will probably not play at the start of next year. Like the turnaround time for an ACL injury, you're looking at roughly 9 to 10 months. And that puts him back around, middle of the season at best next year. And that really depends on his recovery process. So thankfully it was just his ACL, because if there was more, his recovery would be much more strenuous, but very tough to see for him. And for dynasty purposes, you just lost Kyler Murray again for at least a good chunk of next year. And then who knows how he plays after that, right? Like Kyler Murray has been such an electric player for his mobility. And now he doesn't have, like, typically when you see a player tear their ACL, that changes how they play. And that's a huge devastating factor for Kyler Murray, because he uses his legs early and often. That's what he does. There's an argument to be made, that the offensive line is terrible and Kyler Murray has no time. I think that's a valid argument, and I don't expect it to get better. This whole Cardinals organization has been injury plagued this entire year. I would give them the award probably for most injuries on a team. And what really sucks is, DeAndre Hopkins, right? DeAndre Hopkins is somebody who he took his PEDs at the beginning of and missed the first 6 games. We've never seen this offense fully healthy this year. We haven't, with a full starting group of offense. Zach Ertz tore his ACL. Both of the offensive tackles are gone because they're injured. You get DeAndre Hopkins back. As soon as you do that, you get Hollywood out. So like, everything that could go wrong for this team has gone wrong. My only fear, really, I want Cliff Kingsbury gone. And I feel like this is a very a good thing for him, because he can blame it on the year versus their play. Sucks to see. Colt McCoy, it looks like, is going to be the starter for the rest of the remainder of the year. But then what do you do in the offseason? And I was talking to Scotty a little bit about this. Very obviously, I think Jacoby Brissett would be a wonderful fill-in. Jacoby Brissett is no longer going to be with the Browns. He'll be a free agent after this year. I would love it if Jacoby Brissett came and spot started until Kyler Murray's back. I think that he has shown that he still has some juice left in the tank, and I think offensively he would scheme in very well with the Cardinals. Whether that happens or not, we'll see. But devastating news for anybody who owns Kyler in a dynasty format. If you own him in a redraft, you can probably drop him. And his ADP is going to be really interesting next year as well for redraft formats, because I don't expect it to be anywhere close to what it was this year. And he really hasn't done wonderful this year for fantasy football.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned this too. We draft Kyler Murray.
I don't know if you're still there. I'm thinking.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can. I'm sorry. What was that?
I was just saying we draft Kyler Murray for his rushing upside. We don't draft him really for his arm, like, it's not that he has a terrible arm by any means, but that rushing upside is huge for his ceiling, right? And the fact that we talk about this with running backs coming off ACL injuries. It typically takes them a year to get adjusted to their body and their ACL now and get comfortable with their knee. So it's like, okay, Kyler Murray is going to be kind of one-sided for at least half the season next year. I think that's a fair assessment, given how late this ACL injury occurred. So we might be talking about Kyler Murray going, past round 7, round 8 next year, which it'll be interesting to revisit this conversation in a few months.
Absolutely. Tough to see. I wish Cliff would be gone, but I feel like this was a huge band-aid for him to continue his coaching career with the Cardinals. Next piece of news here: Texans running back Dameon Pierce is expected to miss at least one game with a mild to high ankle sprain. You bench him this week?
Yes, you bench Pierce, you bench Rex Burkhead, you bench Dario Bawali, whatever. Best effort, but you bench anybody in that backfield this week. If you are playing one of these guys, I am sorry. Like, you might as well just throw in the white flag this week.
Well, and Dameon Pierce has been somebody who, midway through the year was extremely electric. He was somebody who carried a lot of people to fantasy football wins and very tough to see. And I think some of this is now the teams have more film on him. They can figure out how to shut him down because he really is the only usable piece of that offense this year. And he's starting to get shut down. I mean, he hasn't performed nearly as well as he has in the middle of the season the last couple weeks. So very difficult to see. Bears running back Khalil Herbert. He has a hip injury. He went on IR and he is on track to come off of IR this next week. So stay tuned for that. I'm not saying plug him in and play him, but we were very high on Herbert in the offseason. He looked better than Montgomery in my opinion. And so we'll see. We'll see how that kind of plays out, especially given the fact that Justin Fields is not playing at 100%. Maybe they'll lean a little bit more on the run game. And speaking of the run game here, Patriots running back Ramondre Stevenson suffered a left ankle injury in the first quarter of Monday night's game. He's doubtful going into week 15, which I think is a big blow for a lot of people who are using Stevenson because he's been extremely great for fantasy football. And there's a good chance that he's not going to play this week. So temper your expectations there. Definitely watch out. Are you picking up any of these other running backs for the Patriots in light of this information?
Man, it's tough because Stevenson has been the one Patriots running back that we can really trust in the past, 3-4 years, it seems like, because they just constantly rotate through running backs. So if Stevenson is out, you have to wonder if Damian Harris is going to be available. Mm-hmm. I would say if he's not, then you are looking at a rotation between Pierre Strong and then Kevin Harris, who are both rookie running backs. I think they split pretty evenly after Stevenson went out. So it's hard for me to trust any of those options. Maybe if Harris is in, he's worth a look. He definitely is worth a look, but I have concerns about a rotation going on without Stevenson. So it's hard for me to trust anybody.
I mean, they're playing the Raiders. As a Raiders fan, that the Raiders defense is not great. It's usually a pretty favorable matchup for the running backs. So you're still saying maybe stray away from that?
Yeah, I would, unless we get word that Damian Harris is playing and he's going to be getting the full workload.
Okay. Yeah, tough to see, man. Cooper Kupp will reportedly miss the rest of the season, according to Coach Sean McVay. We've kind of already speculated this, and it seems as if Coach McVay has stated that is the case. So you can drop him if you were holding out on a whim that he is usable. Drop him, not in a dynasty format. That would be silly, but for all you redraft players out there, you can go ahead and drop Kupp. This is some pretty big news, Yeti, and I want to stop here and talk about it for a moment. 49ers wide receiver Deebo Samuel, his knee and his ankle. He went out in the game, did not return, and he could return as soon as week 17. What's your interpretation of this?
Well, if your team is loaded and you have Deebo and you think you're going to make the championship in your playoff leagues, then obviously, you could roster him still. Even if you don't roster him and somebody dropped him, he might be worth an ad. Now, maybe I need to take a step back because he is coming off a pretty severe ankle injury. And if they are going to play him in week 17, he might be eased in. So I retract what I just said.
Okay.
I personally would not play Deebo if he comes back week 17. It's hard for me to trust a guy coming off a severe ankle injury, especially if he would just cart it off,
Sure.
Now, obviously, without Deebo on the field, Christian McCaffrey, I mean, he's an RB1, right? Like, we know this, but even more so, he is going to get so much volume out of the backfield. I feel like they're just going to kind of rely on the running game going forward.
What about Brandon Ayuk? Because you have very obviously Deebo is doing great, but he's gone now. And we saw that before Jimmy G went out, we had Jimmy G was kind of spreading the ball around quite a bit. You couldn't really trust this offense week to week for fantasy football purposes because you didn't know who was going to eat. Jimmy G's out. You got Brock Purdy in there, and now Deebo's gone. Do we trust Brock Purdy enough to be able to spot start Brandon Ayuk without Deebo on the field?
I would say so. I mean, the targets in that offense are going to open up so much without Deebo, and Deebo's role is, he's kind of a gadget type of guy. So they're going to have to open up the playbook a little more. And that might include getting Ayuk the ball a little more and even George Kittle. I think George Kittle had the most targets last week in a few games now. I mean, he was pretty relied on for Brock Purdy. So I like Kittle and I like Ayuk going forward.
Okay. I do agree with you. I think CMC is probably the focal point of this offense moving forward. I mean, he's a very talented person. So they're going to need him, right? And this team is injury ridden. They probably win the award just as much as the Cardinals have for injuries. So Green Bay Packers wide receiver Romeo Doubs fully expects to play in week 15 versus the Rams. You starting him?
No.
Okay.
I mainly
Christian
wanted to
Watson.
list this because Christian Watson. I think Christian Watson takes the biggest downtick with Doubs coming back.
Yeah, and that's I'm interested to see how this plays out because Watson has been very usable over the last couple of weeks. He has certainly been an electric waiver wire ad that has helped a lot of people win very important games for fantasy. Hello, Kat. But Romeo Doubs coming back definitely makes this a little bit more interesting because these wide receivers are starting to get healthy, hopefully, and that could certainly impact where the ball goes for Aaron Rodgers. So some really, really good news here is tight end Dallas Goedert is designated to return from IR. This is huge. This is really, really big. I think Devontae Smith owners are probably slightly saddened by this because Smith has had a huge uptick with the absence of Goddard, but what he means for this offense and this Eagles organization is huge. And the implications for him coming back. Dallas Goedert was somebody who was a favorite target for Jalen Hurts, and him coming back, I think, is a great sign for this offense. And if you've held on to Goddard throughout this injury, you got to be pretty excited to have him back because he is one of those upper echelon tight ends.
Yeah, I kind of think even with Goddard coming back this week, if he does come back this week, they're going to ease him in because this offense is so fucking good, even without him. So they don't really need him per se. So I would be kind of hesitant to fire him up because I could see him on a snap count to start.
Yeah, but I mean, if like playoff implications, like if you can come back for your playoffs, so you're pretty happy about that. Yeah, I'd be interested to see as this week progresses because there is a chance he would, even if he does play, I could see that being on a snap count. Last piece of news here. This is huge. This is breaking news. Very important information. Zach Wilson will be moved up in the depth chart for the Jets. He is now quarterback 2 instead of 3. So according to Coach Robert Salah, Zach Wilson's he's moving up in the world, baby. You must start him this week. Is that how you're looking at Zach Wilson?
He's still got that dog in him, baby.
Oh man,
no,
I hate Zach Wilson.
Yeah. Let's be honest. He probably won't be on the roster next September.
You think he'll get cut? You think that it's going to go that
far? Either cut or traded.
Really?
Because
he's not good.
He's not good, and Mike White has clearly taken the lead. Like Mike White is the guy.
Yeah.
The way to avoid a quarterback controversy is getting rid of one of the guys because all the conversation in the offseason is going to be can Zach Wilson? We're going to be going back and forth all offseason between these guys. Zach Wilson, he looks good in practice. He looks great. He's improved his body. We're going to be hearing this and that.
Yeah.
But I truly think they don't want to start or mess with any of that drama and they get rid of him.
I wouldn't. I mean, yeah. And I think that he's done. I think his career is, maybe a backup quarterback somewhere, but he hasn't played good. He has not played good. And I'm ready for the future for this Jets organization. I think they are too. So that's the last piece of news we got here. Before we get into our starts and sits, I do just want to let everybody know football will be played on Saturday this week as well as Sunday. So if you did not know that, go check your lineups and make sure that all of your starting players for Saturday are not in your flex position. Make sure they're in a starting wide receiver and or running back role. Don't put them in the flex because who knows what might happen. The games that are played this Saturday include the Colts versus the Vikings, the Ravens versus the Browns, and the Dolphins versus the Bills. So if you hear any of those teams and you have players on those teams, you need to go make sure that your lineup is set correctly because they will be playing on Saturday. There's also games on Sunday. And now I got to warm up my vocal cords because I lost a bet.
Yeah, let's hear those vocals, baby.
All right, so now we're going to move on to our starts of the week.
Let's get it started in here.
Wow.
There you go. There you go. You know what? I'm a man of my word. I lost a bet for those that are listening and did not listen to last week's episode. Najee Harris, he screwed me over. The over-under was 12 points, and he got a last-minute touchdown, you son of a bitch. I took the under on that, and he barely hit it.
Shout out to Najee.
Damn.
I know
So
he's a big listener to our podcast, so
Yeah.
shout out to him for fucking over slaps.
Yeah, thank you for that. You know what? I'll go. I think you started last week first for the starts of the week. So if you'd like, I can kick it off, and then you can follow suit if you'd like.
Yes, sir.
All right. My first start of the week here is you know what? I'm going to call him Sir Michael White. He's the man. He's the man. We just talked about him a minute ago. Mike White, he left the game twice last week and came back both times. And then he went to the
hospital. See those hits?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Like, I thought he just got the wind knocked out of him. It was cold in Buffalo. It was snowing. It was a nasty hit that he took.
He took like two WWE level spears right to the fucking midsection.
Yeah, it looked so painful. He ended up going to the hospital after the game, and he was cleared to fly home with the team. I think at this juncture, Yeti, Mike White's a certified dog, like for real. This man, after he took 2 hits, he went to the medical tent, he came back out, he played. That's a dog. That is a certified dog. So White says that he's good to go. Obviously, players want to play, but Coach Salah is optimistic that he will play. Currently, he's getting some limited snap counts. So I think this is a good sign for those that own White. And he's my start of the week. You know, fantasy managers should be licking their chops at this matchup. They're facing, it's the Jets versus the Lions. Yeti, I don't know if you know this, but the Lions are actually leading the league in giving up points to quarterbacks. So there's a couple questions on Twitter. Should I start Mike White or this person? Should I start Mike White or this person? I've seen it already, right? And they're asking us. And so this is me telling you Mike White is the safest play. Like, I think he's a lock. You know, this offense looks way better with him. He's throwing the ball a lot more. He's slinging it around. And the Lions defense is terrible. So Mike White is definitely a start of the week for me.
And not only is Mike White a good start this week, but I think rest of the season, he is definitely worth the roster. And I know we'll probably talk about him again next week, but I would not cut bait with Mike White after this week. Mm-hmm. If you're looking to add people on the waiver wire, hold on to him, please.
Yeah. 100%.
Don't let this dog go.
Yeah. This is certified dog. Don't let him go.
From one dog to another, let's ride.
Let's ride. What do you got, Eddie? First start of the week.
First start of the week for me is Isaiah Pacheco. So, yes, this is very interesting because McKinnon actually outperformed Pacheco last week. But Pacheco continues to see more carries than McKinnon out of the backfield. Now, I know our resident Chiefs experts have really nailed this backfield. McKinnon, he's going to be the go-to back when games are close. I feel like Andy Reid trusts McKinnon more in certain situations, such as last week versus Denver, where McKinnon was getting a lot of the pass work because it was a close game at one point.
Yeah.
Whereas Pacheco, he's going to be relied on when they have the lead. I think it's worth noting too that Pacheco has put up back-to-back weeks in the top 20, so he's an RB2 as it stands. Mm-hmm. And he gets a much better game script this week versus Houston. Kansas City are currently 14-point favorites. So they are expected to have the lead for most of the game, as they should. And Houston also gives up the most rushing yards per game and the most fantasy points to running backs on the year. So I like Pacheco. Fire him up. If you have McKinnon, I think you can also fire up McKinnon.
Okay. That was going to be my question, is because you mentioned the Houston Texans and how awful they are against the running back position. We've seen somewhat of a split backfield, right? You know, McKinnon was on the field for 57% of snaps last week and Pacheco for 43. So you're borderline close there, right? But Pacheco's getting more of the actual handoff running back esque work, and McKinnon has seen most of his efficiency through the air. So you do feel comfortable starting both of them if you own them?
Yeah,
okay.
I definitely do. The NFL is a copycat league, and what do teams do against Houston? They run the fucking ball. Yeah. And I think this is a great time to do so, especially late in the season, when you're trying to keep your main guys healthy and you're just trying to hold on to leads and you're just trying to win games because you're basically working on seeding at this point, right? So I expect them to run the ball heavily, and I expect both guys to be involved quite a bit.
Okay, I like that, and I'm glad you brought up McKinnon because he was definitely a question I think a lot of people are looking for some guidance on. So my next start of the week here is Donovan Peoples-Jones. So DPJ, he had an explosive performance last week. He went 8 for 12 for 114 yards. And I think we're starting to see, a possibility of what the future could look like with Deshaun Watson controlling this offense. So he's still a little rusty. I'm not going to say that Deshaun Watson is back to form and looking 100%, but the wide receivers get a favorable matchup against this Ravens defense that is allowing 36 points to wide receivers, which puts them top 10 worst defenses against wide receivers. So a very favorable matchup for these wide receivers. And then I think to compound on this, Amari Cooper was listed as a non-participant yesterday in practice. They didn't actually practice, but if they did practice, they came out and said he would be a non-participant. So he had a hip injury that he picked up last week against the Bengals. So I think that kind of aids Donovan Peoples-Jones in a lot of ways. And I'm interested to see how this offense evolves with Deshaun Watson there as he gets more comfortable. I think we're seeing it. I don't think we're there yet 100%, right? His first game was against the Texans, and he didn't look great. If you watch the game against the Bengals, you saw some flashes of like, oh, this is the old Deshaun Watson that we could see here. And I think that as he gets more comfortable in this offense and he gets more back to his form, granted, he hasn't played football in 2 years. So I think as he gets back to that, we're going to continue to see a lot of production out of this offense. And I like Donovan Peoples-Jones this week. I think it's a great matchup, and I think they're going to have to throw the ball a little bit. And given Cooper's injury and how DPJ has started to click a little bit with Watson, I expect that to continue to go upwards. So I love him as a play this week. And if you're on the cusp of playing him or not, I definitely would put him in your starting lineup.
Yeah, and I think it's worth mentioning too, in their first matchup, I think they played week 7, week 8. DPJ, he had 6 catches for 71 yards. So he has proven that he can win his matchup there versus the Ravens. So I agree with everything you said. I think this offense is going to start rolling a little bit, and they are going to have to throw the ball against this pass funnel defense. So great pick. Thank you. I am going to play somebody from this game as well.
All right, load it up.
Mr. J.K. Dobbins.
Yes.
JK is back, I think, question mark?
Question mark.
But he made his return last week to the starting lineup versus Pittsburgh, seeing all the carries, or majority of the carries, I should say. And he dominated the short yardage and the goal line carries for Baltimore. He finished last week as a top 10 running back, so shout out to JK for that. And the Ravens are going to rely heavily on Dobbins this week, as they are likely down to their 3rd string quarterback. And to make things better for JK, they have a friendly matchup on the ground versus Cleveland. This Cleveland defense has given up 128 rushing yards per game, and they also give up the 4th most rushing touchdowns with 17 on the season. So I like JK a lot. And to add on a little more to JK, he hyped himself up earlier today in an interview. He said, hopefully those 100-yard games will turn into 200-yard games, and I'm just going to keep on getting healthier. So I'm, you're going to see 200 yards. Let's ride the high, I'm
like
comfortable with JK
I like this one.
week.
I think this is good. I'm interested to see how this progresses, because the whole team is really another injury-ridden team. Lamar Jackson went out, Tyler Huntley went out, and I think that with them being on their 3rd string quarterback, they're going to have to rely on the run game. So it's great that he's back. He did look great last week, and I think I will continue to ride this train as well. So let's ride, baby. Let's ride.
One thing I want to know is, have you seen the video of him going around last week where his knee doesn't look like it's like bending properly at all?
No.
You haven't?
No, I have not.
You should look it up, because it's kind of like, oh shit, like maybe he isn't fully healthy, but he's still got the speed and he's still making people miss.
He's doing it. He's
still doing it, man.
All right. Last start of the week for me is Mr. Michael Pittman. So for those that own Michael Pittman, I was looking at this. I was looking at some stats before the show started. pulling up some information here. Michael Pittman is a top 24 wide receiver for fantasy football.
Doesn't feel like it.
It doesn't. It doesn't feel like it. This Michael Pittman feels like Scary Terry last year because Scary Terry finished top 24. And if you owned Scary Terry in fantasy football last year, you did not feel like he was a top 24 receiver. You didn't, because there were weeks where he was duds and there was week where it was booms. And that's kind of the same story that we're seeing with Michael Pittman. I think he's wide receiver 22 at the moment right now. So while Pittman has been non-existent, or was non-existent, the Colts blowout last week against the Cowboys, I expect this game to be much different for him. The Colts are playing the Vikings defense, which is the second worst defense in the league when it comes to points to wide receivers, with the Lions being number one. So I expect this team to find success through the air. And I think Michael Pittman's going to be a huge beneficiary of that. We have seen what Michael Pittman is. He's kind of back to usable fantasy performance with Matt Ryan under the helm. And I think that I would comfortably play him this week, given this matchup. So he's my last start of the week.
Yes. Yeah. I love Pittman. He was a guy that I was going to listen to my starts as well, because I have the self rule now that I am starting any wide receiver against Minnesota because they are god awful.
Yes,
so whenever you see Minnesota on the schedule, plug in the wide receiver. Don't even question it. Just do it.
Yep.
I'm also going to the wide receiver room here for my last start of the week in Chris Olave. I know Chris Olave is kind of, he's been lackluster the past couple weeks, or the 2 games leading into their bye week. He finished as a wide receiver 40 versus San Fran and then versus Tampa Bay. So not great, but things get much better for Olave this week against Atlanta. Olave is a leading receiver for the Saints, and I expect him to dominate again against a defense that is allowing the 6th most passing yards per game with 251. I like Olave and the Saints to win this game, and I think Olave is going to play a huge factor in that part, or in that win. So I'm comfortable playing Olave.
Okay. Is Michael Thomas done? Like, is this, this is like the 3rd year. He didn't play the last 2 years. He comes back. He's out again for the rest of the year. Like, if you own Michael Thomas in a dynasty format, you're probably not going to drop him, but you're probably thinking about it. Like, is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so, man. Something's got to change for Michael Thomas, because I don't think he can be an every down wide receiver anymore, which sucks to say, because when he's healthy, he's explosive and he's fun to watch. But he can't stay on the field. And I think they are going to have to figure something out in the offseason. I don't know what that looks like, but I don't.
Well, they're in cap space hell too. The Saints are they're not in a favorable situation for a rebuild right now, because their cap space is so terrible. So I'm interested to see what they do. I probably wouldn't drop Thomas. Maybe try and sell him if you can on a dynasty format and see if you can get anything for him. But tough to see, because he, when he's on the field, he's certainly usable, but the problem is getting him on the field. So,
and I just want to quickly touch on another wide receiver in this game, Drake London. So this is going to be our first week we see Desmond Ridder at the helm for the Falcons.
Let's go.
They had a bye week last week, and they announced that Ridder was going to start against the Saints this week. Mariota is on the IR with a knee injury, so Ridder's got the helm, or he's got a pretty long leash, I would say. With him at the helm, I know we've been praying for this all season because we know Mariota's garbage. But do you expect Drake London to perform this week, or do you like him rest of the season, or what do you think about?
I'm afraid of Drake London for the rest of the season. I don't want to write him off, but we don't know what Desmond Ridder looks like, and that is something that I think we've talked about it on the show before. Desmond Ridder, I'm so happy that they're putting him in, because for my own selfish reasons, but also for like the future of this franchise. You drafted this quarterback, you haven't used him, and Marcus Mariota, there's concerns, right? Because you've got Marcus Mariota starting, which tells us as just spectators of the sport, Desmond Ridder's probably not ready. Like if you're starting Marcus Mariota, we've seen what Marcus Mariota is. I watched that man throw a ball vertically straight up in the air right when he was about to hit the ground. And I'm like, you're still starting this guy over Desmond Ridder. So there were some concerns, and I'm like, why would you not start your rookie? Your season is over. But then you look at it from an analytical perspective, and you see, they're still in contention because this division is so terrible, which is just mind-boggling that they're in that position that they're in. But that's where they're at, right? So I kind of understood it. I'm excited to see Desmond Ridder. I want to see what he can do. And I think if you're a Falcons fan, that's a mentality that you should have. For fantasy purposes, I'm scared. I'm not going to lie, especially with the departure of Kyle Pitts going on IR and being done for the year. That gives him one less very important weapon on this offense. And we know the Falcons like to run the ball a lot. So I'd like to see how Ridder does before you start Drake London. I would be sitting him, to be honest with you. That's the camp that I am in. Is I'm going to sit him and I want to see how Ridder looks before I risk starting him, because you could get pretty mediocre play like we already have from him at times. And I don't know, with the rookie coming in there, it's his first NFL start. Nobody's expecting greatness out of him. So let's see how it progresses before you just throw London in that starting role.
Yeah, I agree from a fantasy perspective, and it doesn't get a whole lot better for the Falcons wide receiver room or Desmond Ridder. After this week, they play the Ravens, which that's a little better for him, but then they play the Cardinals, who have a good secondary, and they shut down wide receivers. So yeah, it's going to be tricky maneuvering through this backfield, and I think you can probably bench London. But
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm very excited to watch this situation unfold for the Falcons, because I feel like they are in a win-win situation now. Because if they win games, they're going to win the division, and they're going to have
crazy.
Ridder, and they can be like, "Oh, Ridder's our guy." They're going to be excited. But if they lose, that just increases their draft pick.
Yep. It
So
helps with the draft pick.
they're in a great situation right now, and I'm glad that they finally pulled the trigger.
Yeah, and I've seen some early comments from a lot of people about their draft position and stuff like that, and they're like they're going to move on from Ridder, and I'm like, are they? Like, there's a chance they could, depending upon where they are in the draft, but like they also need a lot of defensive help, so like they could swing for a defensive pick instead of that. So I'm interested to see how this plays out. We'll see. I'm excited for Ridder to start though, and I'm not telling you to go grab him off of waivers, but I own him in a dynasty league. And I'm very excited for the possibility of what if. And I think those in dynasty formats should share that same sentiment, because Marcus Mariota, ironically enough, has been pretty usable for fantasy football. At one point in time, he was a top 10 quarterback, but it's gotten to the point now where, he's hurt, and let's move on to the future. So I'm excited for it. So let's move on. Let's move on to our sits of the week.
Yo, boss, what's going on?
Sit down and shut up.
Shut up and sit down.
Oh, shut up and sit down.
Are you going to shut up and sit down? Shut up and sit down.
Yeti, I will go ahead and kick us off just like I did for the starts. So my first sit of the week, I think some people are going to be a little upset about this. So I just want to preface by saying this. My first sit of the week is Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Spicy.
So this is a little bit of a hot take. I don't have a hot take dropper. Scotty has that. So he's been incredible. He's been such a great wide receiver when he is on the field. Those that took him, and kind of, I don't want to say it was a risk, because he did have a little bit of a breakout last year coming into this year, but it definitely was a question mark as far as expectations and what he was going to do for fantasy football. He's been great. He's been wonderful, but he's going up against a Jets defense that is absolutely shutting down the wide receivers. They're third in the league. And I don't expect Amon-Ra St. Brown to get over 11 points in this one. I think that he is going to be a focal point for this Jets defense, and I think that they are going to shut him down. So if I own Amon-Ra St. Brown, I'd probably be looking at a different, which is tough, right? Because he's been almost matchup proof, but there are times where he has not gotten over 10 points. So I'm going to sit him. I'm sitting him this week.
Are we playing the over-under game here?
I'll play it for somebody else. I don't want to play for Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Damn. Okay. That's a spicy take. I'm in the camp of, you draft these guys and you play your studs.
Yep.
Even with a tough matchup, like he's going to get hyper targeted.
I know. He's 9 over the last, since week 8, he's averaging roughly 9 to 10 targets a game. So, which is great.
Pay that volume, man.
I know. But I think the Jets defense is the real deal. And you look at the other matchups, and the Jets have a very good defense, and I just see them shutting him down. And so there's a hot take. I understand that. I'm sitting Amon-Ra this week. I think he finishes outside of top 12 wide receivers this week. So, which is still startable, right? That's a wide receiver too. But I think that there's a very good chance that he does not perform very well.
Oh man. All right. Well, this one's not going to be as spicy. Maybe a little We're going from
And
like ghost
my
pepper
spice.
to like
Yeah.
jalapeno level here.
Yeah.
Maybe not even hot. But I'm starting sitting rather Michael Carter or Zonovan Knight in
Okay.
that same game. So Bam Bam Knight, whatever the fuck we're
Bam.
calling him. Bam,
What?
is that his
I don't
name?
even know where that came from because, like, where'd you get Bam from? It was probably a college name. I don't
I
know.
would assume so. Maybe he's just a legend in the locker room and he earned that nickname.
He's carrying a big stick, and they're
He's
like,
got that Bam.
yeah, Bam.
Anywho, Bam has been on quite the tear lately. He's finished as a top 15 running back in back-to-back weeks versus Minnesota and Buffalo. And this largely came at the expense of Michael Carter missing time, who appears to be on track to play this week. Now, this hurts Bam Bam, as does Ty Johnson's sudden emergence into the backfield, which is making this backfield a 3-man rotation, which is just disgusting.
Yeah.
And usually we do fire up everybody against Detroit. But, as you guys noted on Monday/Tuesday's episode, Detroit has only allowed 58 rushing yards per game the past 5 weeks. They shut down Dalvin Cook, ETN, Singletary, Barkley in the Chicago backfield. So I am looking for other options if I own Michael Carter or Zonovan Knight this week.
Are you surprised? And I'm just genuinely curious as far as James Robinson, are you surprised that he's not being utilized? Like, did you expect him to be more of a focal point in this offense with Breece Hall going down and them trading for him?
See, James Robinson is such a weird case because, he's coming off a pretty severe injury or surgery last season, and he starts the season looking great. I think he was a top 15 back, for the first 3 or 4 weeks. I might have that backwards. But he looked good. And then he's suddenly fallen off a cliff. ETN took over the backfield for Jacksonville, and now he can't even get on the field for the Jets. So I'm wondering if something is just not right with him, like physically, because it is a bit of a surprise to see him fall off the way he has.
I would agree. He was somebody that I was actually really excited about when he went to the Jets with Breece going down, and the archetype of the player that he is. I was pretty excited for him to go there. I figured he'd get used early and often and kind of be a pseudo Breece Hall because we've seen his explosiveness with the Jaguars. So yeah, something's going on there. I don't know if it's personnel and him, or maybe it is his injury. I'm not sure, but I was a little disheartened to see that he's not really being utilized like we thought he would. So my next sit of the week here is Hollywood Brown. And I think that this is kind of to be expected. There's a lot to unpack here that we covered some of this already. Obviously, Kyler Murray is no longer in the picture, and I think that changes the landscape for this entire wide receiver room for the rest of the year, really. Colt McCoy is not bad. I don't think, if you have a backup quarterback, obviously that sucks. But I think Colt McCoy is not a terrible backup, but he is definitely not a Kyler Murray. And he has his favorite go-to guys. If it was any indication, if you watch the rest of the game, which I'm sure a lot of you probably didn't, but me as a Cardinals fan, I'm still going to try and watch it. He had his go-to guy, and that was DeAndre Hopkins. So I expect that to be the case again. DeAndre Hopkins is a focal point for the Cardinals offense, and he is an extremely talented wide receiver. I just don't see Hollywood getting as involved. Because they're also going up against the Broncos defense, and the Broncos defense, as we know, their offense is subpar at best, but they have a no joke defense. Like the Broncos defense is very, very good. I expect them to shut down most of this offense, to be completely honest, especially with Kyler Murray gone. And I would try and pivot away from Hollywood Brown this week if you have the opportunity to do so.
Yeah. So I know D-Hop, he's a wide receiver 1 and he's hard to bench, but are you kind of tempering your expectations on him this week as well and going forward?
Yeah, probably. I think, like I mentioned, this Broncos defense is going to be looking to exploit every opportunity that they have without Kyler Murray in the picture. Colt McCoy, he had a couple scrambles this last week, but he doesn't keep the play alive like Kyler Murray does. There's very few quarterbacks in the NFL that are able to do that. And I think that's part of it. So I would temper my expectations with really this entire offense. It gets a downgrade. And I think they enter more of that conversation of a matchup dependent type caliber of defense. So the Broncos are not a matchup that is favorable for this team. And I do temper expectations. I still think if I owned Hopkins, I may start him just given the level of talent that he is and how he will be a focal point to try and get the ball in their playmakers' hands. But I just don't see that happening with Hollywood Brown, and I think that's part of the problem. So is Kyler Murray not being around and being able to stretch the plays alive and kind of look around and do that scrambling-esque, let me just get it into the open hands of a wide receiver type play. So it's a tough blow as a Cardinals fan, like we talked about a little bit earlier. Very shitty to see, and it's very frustrating. And but I would be benching Hollywood, and these players now become much more matchup dependent for me.
Yep. And another person in this matchup that we should really temper our expectations on is Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy is my second sit of the week, and many people are going to be considering Jeudy as a play this week after finishing as a top wide receiver versus the Chiefs last week. You know, he had a pretty damn good game with 3 touchdowns that really saved him or elevated his performance. Now his performance was against a very shitty defense. I'm sorry, Chiefs fans. I'm sorry, Matt. Sorry, Alan.
Get him.
But the Chiefs secondary is bad, and this is the only time I'm allowed to roast the Chiefs because the Raiders are whatever. So Jeudy went up against a bad secondary. Cortland Sutton was gone, and Russ was healthy at the time. Well, bad news for Jeudy is Sutton is expected back this week, and Russ is most likely out with a concussion, leaving Brett Ripien, something like that, as a starting quarterback. And to make matters worse, Denver goes up against a Cardinals secondary that has given up the 3rd fewest yards to wide receivers with 121 yards per game. So I am not excited about Judy's performance last week, and I'm keeping him on the bench if I have him.
Does it change? You know, you mentioned Russell Wilson. We saw what happened to him. He got concussed. It was a nasty hit. He had like an egg-sized welt on his forehead. He's probably not going to play this week. But let's talk hypotheticals for a moment. If Russell Wilson plays this week, does that sway anything for Jerry Jeudy, or are you still looking for other options?
No, I'm still looking for other options because let's look at Judy's performances on the season so far. He hasn't done much. And now we expect Cortland Sutton to come back, which Sutton isn't great by any means, but he eats into that target share a little that Jeudy saw last week. So I'm not excited about any wide receivers in the Broncos room.
Okay. I like that. You know, I was talking to a family member of mine and they were asking me about Jerry Jeudy this week. And I said, hey, we're going to be talking about him today. So tune in. And for those that are tuning in live, appreciate you guys tuning in. We will answer your questions at the end of the episode. So if you guys have any, shoot them on over and we'll tackle those. We're getting closer to the end of the episode. So I appreciate you guys holding on and appreciate your questions, and we will tackle them momentarily. My last set of the week here is Justin Fields. So, I know that we have some people picked him up and are probably, this is going to be some upsetting news to the Brainiacs, but I would 100% be sitting Fields this week. He's been electric for the second half this year with the Bears. The Bears just found out a couple weeks ago that Justin Fields actually can run the ball. It's completely absurd that it took him this long to figure this out, but he can run, and he can run really, really well. But what Fields is not good at is throwing the ball. And we have seen that time and time again. I think, he's starting to get a little bit more comfortable doing that, but it's not anywhere like a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes or Justin Herbert-esque level, right? So he's going up against the Eagles, and this Eagles defense is the best in the league against quarterbacks, plain and simple. They're the number 2 against the quarterbacks, and realistically, they should be the number 1 against the quarterbacks. The only reason that they're not is because the Texans are number 1 against the quarterbacks, and that's solely because all anybody ever does is run the ball on the Texans, so the quarterbacks aren't needed. Realistically, this is the best defense against quarterbacks, and I see them shutting Justin Fields down. Like, this is an elite, very good defense. The Texans is not, but this one is. The Eagles are. And I just think this is going to be a very subpar game for Justin Fields. I think, the Eagles are well coached, and they're going to be looking at shutting him down and taking away the scramble and forcing him to throw the ball. And he's not a good pocket passer. Like he's, hopefully you see some of that develop for all you Bears fans out there. I'm really not trying to dog on him, but I would be making a pivot against Justin Fields this week. And I just don't think this matchup is there for him. So I'm not saying drop him, but I'm saying you need to probably look at some other options here. So he's my last start of the week, or sit of the week, excuse me.
Yeah, Mike White. I would probably start Mike White over Justin Fields this week.
Well, there's been people that ask us on Twitter, and they're like, "Hey, should I start Mike White or Justin Fields this week?" And I was like, "This is interesting. It's Mike White. Like Mike White is the person." And they're like, "Well, Justin Fields has been doing great," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's great, and I understand that. I really do. But we have to look at matchups a little bit here. Look at the matchup that Justin Fields is going into. It's not great, and Mike White has the best matchup you can ask for out of any quarterback this week. So if you're like in between the fence on him, it's Mike White for me very easily. Justin Fields, I would be very afraid to play him this week.
Yep. I like that pick, Slaps. Thank you. Pick. My last sit of the week is going to be another split backfield. I am sitting DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams if I have them on my team or one of them on my team. Okay. So all of social media really hyped up DeAndre Swift last week as RB1 for the rest of the season. For whatever reason, we decided to go down that avenue. I guess not us, but people on social media were pushing for DeAndre Swift to be an RB1 rest of the season. Did we all of a sudden forget that Jamal Swift is leading the league in rushing touchdowns? Jamal Williams. What did I say?
You said Jamal Swift. You're just putting
Hey, if you combine both of them, you get a damn good running back.
You get a real RB1 there.
Yeah, but Jamal Williams leads the league in touchdowns, and he's leading the team in carries. Did we forget about that? Also, Justin Jackson. What the fuck, man?
Where did he come from?
Yeah, where is he coming from? Because last week he was the third down back, and he's earning more time near the goal line as well, which further complicates this backfield. Yes. What the fuck, man? I think this backfield is a complete toss-up on a week-to-week basis, and you can't really trust any of these options going forward. Combine that with the fact that they go up against a Jets defense that is pretty, they're not extremely elite against the run, but they only allow 86 yards per game on the ground. So they're pretty good. So with that being said, I'm sitting both of these guys if I have them.
Is Jared Goff a play for you this week? I'm curious because this is a very good defense, but Jared Goff has been playing some pretty good football. Like, where are you with that? Like, would you rather start Mike White or Jared Goff?
I'm starting Mike White. Okay. I know Jared Goff has been elite, which is weird to say.
It is weird
for fantasy purposes.
Yeah.
I'll temper it there a little bit.
You go.
But the Jets they're very, very good against quarterbacks. I said a crazy stat last week. I can't remember exactly. I think the Jets have only allowed one fantasy quarterback to go over 15 points, and that was Josh Allen. Mm-hmm. And I don't think Jared Goff is going to be.
He's not the level that Josh Allen is.
No, he's not. So I would play Mike White over Goff. But Goff's emergence this season has been interesting to watch. It's kind of been fun because I've never had an issue with Goff. But my God, I think we are all just saying he's a transitional quarterback. But he's having quite the resurgence.
Last year he didn't look great. Obviously, with the Rams, they traded him away, and he was okay. But yeah, he's actually looking not bad this year. So I'm interested to see what the Lions do long term here. Like, do they ride Goff a little bit longer, or do they look towards the future and try and get a rookie in an upcoming draft here? So interested to see how that plays out. But I do like this sit of the week. But it's a three-headed dog, or kind of a three-headed dog for this Lions backfield, and I don't. No, if I had to, I'll ask you this question. If you had to start any of these running backs and you were in a running back purgatory, which one would you choose?
If I had to, and I was in a PPR format, I'm going Swift. Okay. Just because of the targets that he sees out of the backfield. And I'm hoping that he can run one in.
If you're not in a PPR format. You take Williams for the goal line upside?
I think so. Just because he's getting majority of the goal line carries. Yeah, that's who I would lean.
Okay. That's it for our starts and sits of the week. We're going to go ahead and move on to our questions here. So for those who have been oh so patient and sent us in your questions, we'll begin to tackle those right now.
Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want to wail. Mail!
I was a little early. I was a little early on that one.
You pushed it. You pushed it.
I did.
There.
I was so excited. I was like, "Fuck yeah, let's get Blue out here." First question comes from Jackson Beckham. Jackson Beckham is debating between starting Deshaun Watson versus the Ravens or Justin Fields versus the Eagles. Fields has obviously looked so much better than Deshaun Watson, but the Ravens defense is a lot softer than the Eagles defense. What is your guys' thoughts? Which quarterback would you start this week?
Well, in our sit segment just a few minutes ago, our slaps covered Justin Fields pretty well. I feel like Justin Fields this week can sit on your bench, especially if you have Deshaun Watson, because I think Deshaun Watson's upside this week against the Ravens is pretty high. I think he's starting to knock off some of the rust that we saw the first week. He looked better last week, and I expect that to improve. The Browns are going to be throwing the ball a lot. They're going to be throwing the ball a lot against the Ravens because they have a pass funnel defense, and that means more points, more opportunities for Watson. I like Watson's matchup a lot more as well, obviously. So I'm going with Watson.
Okay. I'm also going to roll Watson on that one for everything that I just mentioned with Fields earlier. There's concern there, some real concern. So give me Watson. Next question comes from George Cook or Coke. Hopefully it's Cook. Sorry if I butchered that. He needs a running back in a flex and a half PPR format. His options are Kenneth Walker, Jamal Williams, Mike Evans, Darius Slayton. If T. Higgins misses time, then it'd be the same guys. So I'm just choosing which one I should bench. Yeti, what are you thinking? It's kind of a gross list.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't want to break your heart.
Well, normally you're playing Kenny Walker like no brainer, right? But given his matchup with San Fran, I think San Fran has given up like less than 50 yards on the ground the last 5 weeks, which is fucking insane. And Kenneth Walker is coming off an ankle injury. That makes him a little risky for me. Gosh.
And then you got Darius Slayton, who's playing against the Commanders, and the Commanders' defense is actually pretty legit too. This
Jamal
is tough,
Williams, man. I just sat him, for obvious reasons with the split backfield. That's a really tough question. Just based off of volume expected, I would probably go Mike Evans.
You're gonna play Mike Evans or sit him?
Yeah, I'm playing Mike Evans. I guess I'm sitting Darius Slayton if that's the question.
Sure. So you're going to play Mike Evans, which I agree with. I think given the talent that is Tom Brady, you hope maybe you don't see what happened last week. I would also start Mike Evans. I think it would be Jamal Williams for me because the 49ers have a shutdown running defense, and I see that happening with Kenneth Walker. I would probably do Jamal Williams and Mike Evans myself. I don't know if you agree with that.
As starts?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
Okay. Next question comes from Dank Out for Gordon. I wonder if it's Gordon Ramsay. I'm not sure. But either way, we're danking out for Gordon. His team unfortunately missed the playoffs in his money league, but I'm still trying to get some enjoyment out of the rest of my season and win some games in the consolation bracket. So I have a question, and that is it in poor taste to continue putting in waiver claims with the team no longer playing for the championship? What are your thoughts on this, Yeti?
First of all, I think your league settings should change a little because I think the consolation bracket should play for something, whether that's a first round pick next year, if it's just a one-time year thing, like it's just a one and done, at least play for money back or something. There needs to be some kind of incentive, or else you're just going to have people go dormant and they're not going to do anything.
Yep.
But to answer your question, I think it's in complete great taste to continue playing because that's what fantasy football is. Like, you are trying to outsmart people and you are still trying to win games, even though you're in the consolation bracket. And if you go dormant, then that gives other guys an opportunity to get guys they normally wouldn't get because their waiver claims are too high. You know, they normally wouldn't get a good defense if the guys that are in the consolation bracket aren't playing anymore. So I think you are in great taste in continuing to play, and you're doing it the right way.
I will tell you, as somebody, you know, I'm a commissioner in a couple different leagues. Nothing makes me happier than having players that are still playing. I also did just get a notification. Brown's offensive coach hints that Watson will throw deep more often. So cue up your DPJs, baby. Going back to the question, though, for Donovan out or Dank for Gordon. Dank out for Gordon, excuse me. I love that, man. I love when people are constantly still playing the waivers. In a dynasty format, it gets a little bit more interesting because we're still working out some of the kinks as far as you don't want people intentionally throwing their games. But in a redraft format, man, I love when people are active, even when they are in the toilet bowl. It's good to see. And it also, you're playing chess, right? Because let's say you're looking down the line and you're like, well, screw it. I'm going to grab this best defense for rest of the season because I might be able to take it away from one of those guys who's competing up in the top. And that could make all the difference and that could skew things. So you still play a pivotal role for the overall league. And I like the fact that that you're still trying to do it and make the toilet bowl worth something at the end. Like you mentioned, Yeti, whether that be, we do something where I think it's in the toilet bowl. Whoever wins the toilet bowl gets to pick, not they can pick wherever they want to draft that next year. So like we run a snake redraft format. They might look and say, I want the 6th overall pick or the 1st overall pick or whatever the case is. So it gives that toilet bowl a little bit more incentive to continue to try and push for excellence. So I love the question, and I think that you should continue to do that. So next question comes from Jonathan Jones. Mr. Jonathan Jones has asked us quite a few questions. So we'll start out with this one. He asks, Travis Etienne, Kenneth Walker, Donta Foreman, and Elijah Moore. Needs us to start 2 of them. Yeti, what are you doing? I think I know who I'm going to do here, and I can kick this off if you'd like me to, but that's up to you.
Yeah, lead it off.
I'm going to take Donta Foreman here. Donta Foreman is one of the starts this week for me. Surprisingly, they beat the Seahawks last week, and you know what? Donta Foreman was the focal point for the run game for them. Obviously, I don't think he finished as the RB1 on that team, but he had 21 carries last week for 74 yards. Didn't see the end zone. He was on the field for 47% of the snaps, and they get Pittsburgh this week. So Steelers, they're all right for the run. They're an all right defense, but the Panthers are going to be running the ball. That is what they are going to do. And Donta Foreman is the person I believe to own in that backfield. So I'm going to start Foreman as 1. I don't like Walker. We talked about him. I think for me, Yeti, it's probably Elijah Moore. I think that's who I'm going to roll with. In the hopes that, you know, we talked about this. Mike White's a start of the week. Why is he a start of the week? Because he's going to be throwing the ball a lot. These Jets wide receivers get a huge bump without Zach Wilson back there. And I see them having a lot of fantasy football relevance. So understand that Elijah Moore, his ceiling has not been wonderful, but I think this matchup is completely there for him as far as usability for fantasy football. ETN and Kenneth Walker both do not have great matchups. So I think I personally would take Elijah Moore and Donta Foreman, which is weird because both ETN and Walker have been like middle of the year, like breakout candidates that have killed it. But I think I would pivot away from them given the matchups.
Yeah. See, Foreman, I played him in DraftKings last week. This isn't legal advice or gambling advice, by the way. But Foreman kind of fucked me over because Blackshear, who's a rookie running back, kind of came in and took snaps from him, as did Chuba Hubbard. So I was kind of, thrown off by that. But, Foreman did see majority of the carries, and he has a decent matchup this week.
Yeah.
ETN, they go up against the Cowboys. He can't run the ball.
It's gross.
I don't know, man. I don't really feel good about any of these running backs, to be honest. So I think if I had to play one running back, it'd be ETN, because I am locking in Elijah Moore. And I brought some fun little stats here to the table.
Bring them.
So slot wide receivers versus Detroit the last 4 weeks. KJ Osborne, he had 5 catches, 38 yards, and 1 touchdown. Christian Kirk, 6 catches, 104 yards. Isaiah McKenzie, 6 catches, 96 yards, 1 touchdown. Oh, and Wandale Robinson, 9 catches, 100 receiving yards. Elijah Moore, I bring these stats to the table because Corey Davis, who was their slot wide receiver, is out this week. Not confirmed, but he's in concussion protocol,
I think he's questionable right
and he's
now.
probably not going to play. So Elijah Moore took over these snaps in the slot when Corey Davis missed time last week. So I like Elijah Moore a lot if Corey Davis is out. So I'm flexing Elijah and going ETN.
Elijah. That was your free sing of the week.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then we will move on to Caden Luke asks us. He needs to start too. Christian Kirk, Watson. I'm assuming that's Christian Watson. Brandon Ayuk and Michael Pittman. Oh, that's a cool picture there, Caden Luke. Appreciate the question. Thank you. Go ahead, Yeti.
I'm going to play Pittman for sure.
Yep.
Earlier in our episode, you started Pittman for obvious reasons. You know, Minnesota's secondary is god awful. And you fire up any wide receiver that you can. So Pittman is a lock. And then I think I'm going to go with Christian Kirk.
That's who I was going to probably go with too.
Yeah, Christian Watson is hard for me to trust because Dubs is coming back this week. Dubs is going to eat into the volume that Watson sees.
Well, it's also worth noting, like Watson's volume is not like
it's not
elite
great
wide receiver
to start with.
He's just getting touchdowns, which is great. Like, here's you know what? Shit, because the Rams still have a good defense, and Aaron Donald might be back this week, which definitely gets some pressure on. Man, it's got to be Watson or Kirk for me. That's where I'm at. Ayuk, I'd probably bench. I'd like to see Purdy. You know, let's see what this offense looks like without Debo. So it's Christian Watson or Christian Kirk. It's the brother. It's the battle of the Christians. Shit, man. You know what? Here's what I'm gonna do, because you've got Christian Kirk, who's going up against Dallas, and then you got Christian Watson, who's going up against the Rams. Fuck. Here's what I'm going to say. Christian Watson has a higher ceiling, in my opinion. I think that is how I look at this. So if you're looking for a ceiling play, I would play Christian Watson. If you're looking for a safe play, I would play Christian Kirk. Michael Pittman's a lock for me, and that's how I'm going to answer the question, Mr. Luke.
Yep, I think that's fair.
Okay. Jonathan Jones asks, Deshaun Watson or Trevor Lawrence?
Oh, baby. That's spicy.
Trevor Lawrence gets the Dallas Cowboys. Watson, as we mentioned,
never mind. That's not as spicy. I was thinking that Trevor Lawrence gets the Lions for some reason. Deshaun Watson. I think that's a no-brainer.
I agree. He also asked Chris Moore or Treylon Burks if he plays. Pass? Is that an option? Can we pass on questions?
Can we pass on that one? Chris Moore, I mean, he was interesting last week because Nico Collins missed time and Brandon Cooks missed time. I haven't seen any injury reports yet on either player. I'm going to go Burks. I still think I would go Burks because he is the wide receiver one in that offense.
Yeah, I'm going to go Burks if he plays. Next question comes from Squishy Ducky. He's made it to the playoffs, and he's looking for some streamer options for defense. Is there any defenses that you would recommend? He could play the Chiefs, Jets, and Jags are all options on the table for him at defense for the rest of the season. Chiefs for me, you know, we've talked about the Chiefs defense before for playoff seeding. I think the Chiefs are a great defense to own. They have probably the most favorable. In between that, I mean, I don't know if you have any opinions on this, Yeti, as to I'm in the camp that I like to have multiple options at defense. Chiefs this week get the Texans. Next week, they get the Seahawks, and they get Denver again. So definitely playing the Chiefs this week. That's a no-brainer for me. But then you start to play with it. And right, we're playing chess right now. So you get the Jets, who have the Lions. Also a great matchup for the Jets. Kind of. And then you have the Jets get the Jaguars. That week, I would feel... Man, I don't know. It's still got to be the Chiefs, I think, would be who I would want to own. And
I think the Chiefs are going to be the top stream for every week, probably in the playoffs. If you're looking for other plays, if the Chiefs are gone, I think Denver's defense is actually pretty interesting for this week and next week. So they get the Cardinals this week, who go up against Colt McCoy, and then the Rams in week 16, who will get Baker Mayfield at quarterback.
Question mark, probably.
Yeah, question mark, probably. Other options, I actually picked up Tennessee in our redraft league because next week they play Houston. That matchup's pretty juicy, and I'm a Titans fan now. So I like the Titans in week 16. Week 17
Jags get
matchups.
Houston on week 17, like you were probably just about to say. So I would probably stash the Jags and play the Jags week 17. Jags don't have a terrible defense right now. They're playing pretty good. You could probably ride the Chiefs the next 2 weeks if you really wanted to, but the Chiefs are definitely a start for me this week.
Yeah. And the Lions, that's kind of an interesting stream too.
Yeah, interesting.
They get Carolina next week, and then they get the Bears in week 17. So just keep your eyes on them if they are available. But I think that about does it for me. I mean, there's a
lot of different ways you could play it.
Yeah, there's a whole lot
and
of
like
ways.
an injury could change this completely. Like, there could be a big injury like Kyler Murray, and that changes a lot for a lot of streaming defenses. So play it week to week. Obviously, keep your stashes if you have the room on your bench to do so. But that's our advice. I'm gonna try and pronounce this. Ghassan Ayad. I apologize if I butchered that, but he asked, should I swap J.K. Dobbins for Montgomery? Yes or no, Yeti?
Yes.
He's your start of the week. I'm rolling with it. Let's do J.K. Dobbins. Play J.K. instead of Montgomery. He also asked, should I start Driscoll or Kittle at tight end? I'm currently starting Pacheco at flex and Walker and Dobbins at running back. Can I get some help here? I'd probably play Kittle. I'd probably play Kittle. Mr. Irrelevant got a little bit of relevance, so I'd probably play Kittle on that one.
Is this Jeff Driscoll? Isn't he a quarterback?
That's what I thought. I was very confused. I was like, unless it's a super flex league.
That's interesting. Because didn't he play quarterback last week?
For 6% or 6 pass attempts. It's weird. They've come out and said it's going to be a split backfield, I think, between Jeff Driscoll and
that's
Davis
interesting though, because it's kind of like the Taysom Hill case that we had last
year. He's listed at tight end
years?
and QB on Yahoo. That makes it interesting. Here's okay. So he could put. He just said he's listed as QB and tight end on Yahoo. So he could.
He gets the Chiefs this week.
Yeah. Well, here's what I'm going to recommend to you, because I'm looking and I think Davis Mills is going to be the starter. So Davis Mills manages game and loss. It's got to be Kittle. I think it's going to be Davis Mills. I don't think Jeff Driscoll does anything. Watch the news is my recommendation to you, because this is a really interesting question.
Lovie Smith came out and said
as the week progresses and see what Lovie Smith is going to do.
He said yesterday that he wasn't sure whether both Mills and Driscoll would play, but he said he thought the rotation last week was effective. Two different flavors, and that's always tough for a defense to prepare with what we are doing with them. So Mills and Driscoll, they split snaps right down the middle last week. I might play Driscoll, man.
You could.
I think you do. If you're getting a quarterback in the tight end spot,
position.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like Taysom Hill, but just not running as much.
And they go up against KC.
Yeah, I'd probably play Driscoll. I would probably play Driscoll.
Wow,
that's a weird situation. It's a very uncommon situation to be in, but I would play Driscoll in the hopes that maybe he could throw one to the house or something, because then Kittle's just hit and miss, and especially with Purdy back there. So, let's roll Driscoll on that. And I think that's all the questions. We have xx69.biz says free virtual girls chats they sent us. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, go for it.
Don't click on any links. Though.
Yeah, don't click on any links. That was a joke. That's it. That is all the time that we have. If you guys have joined us live and sent us these questions, we do greatly appreciate it. If you just do us a huge favor, if you enjoyed this, hit the subscribe button. We do live shows every Monday and Wednesday night typically, but then we release them as podcasts the following day. So if you're into the podcast scene, as many of our Brainiacs are, we're on every podcast platform. Go join us over there. Hit the subscribe button. It truly does. It means the world. And I appreciate all your guys' questions, as I mentioned. So am I missing anything there, Yeti?
No, but good luck this weekend, guys. Enjoy the good matchups we have.
Absolutely. And for those that made it in the playoffs, let's ride, baby. This is now we're getting into the juicy, the end of this thing. So we'll be here. It is. And this is our first season doing this. So it's made it really fun for us. And you all have made this an incredible journey thus far. And we look forward to
stop. It doesn't stop after the playoffs. We keep it rolling.
Yep. We're going to keep rolling into the off season and keep this thing going. But that is all the time that we have. And we are out.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leather Brains. If you enjoyed the show, please consider subscribing and leaving a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast app and YouTube, as well as following us at Leather Brains on Twitter and Instagram. If you're looking for specific fantasy advice, including draft advice, trade insight, starts and sits, or even if you want our thoughts on your sports bets, please feel free to send us a DM on Twitter for an answer and a chance to have your question featured on a future episode. Again, thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back before you know it.